To another episode of Epic Events. My name is Candace Davis, and I'm the Director of Event Programming and Creative Services here at VFairs. Thank you for joining this Epic Events podcast episode. I am so honored to be joined by Don Donahue, founder of Motion Agency here in Nashville, Tennessee. So Don is the first guest on the podcast from the same city I'm located in. So I'm super excited about that. But also, if you're anyone in the music industry and the events industry here locally too, also in Nashville and abroad, you know Don is a legend.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me on. And as you know, I'm a big fan of your platform, and I found this while researching around, and I think you're an awesome host, and I get something great to learn from every time I watch what you do. I'm a big fan.
You're too kind, Don. I appreciate that. First, I have to say, number one, I can't believe we haven't met after all these years between our music industry days and even now being in events. But we've even been in the same circle of people that we've talked about. And you know this person? Wait, you know this person? So right. I can't believe we haven't crossed paths at some point. I'm sure we've been at a conference or, concert or something.
Probably. And it's Nashville is definitely not the town that I moved to in the early 90s, but it still has that small town feel when you get around the artist community and the event community. And we will fix that and meet in person real soon. Yeah,
I know we've already located and determined the coffee shop that's local here we both love and go to all the time. So we'll have to meet up. But, I usually ask people on the podcast where they're located in the world, and we've already covered that. So we're both here in Nashville, Tennessee. But I would love to dive into your career and for you to give us a snapshot of all that you've done. I mean, between events, entertainment, the music business. You're quite the legend. Like I mentioned, you probably see for people watching this, there's probably a few gold records back there. I know there's one behind you. But there's a lot to be said about all the things that you've accomplished and succeeded in through your career. But I'd love for you to kind of share with our audience here about you.
Well, sure. And as I forewarned you, I am of Irish storytelling heritage, so I can ramble on. So if you need to kind of do this for me, that's fine as well. But yes, I did. I promoted one concert in college at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. And it was a concert by an artist named Michael W. Smith, and he's a contemporary Christian artist. And that went really well. And I just wanted to be a part of the student activities committee and work with them doing that. The concert went so well that his booking agent called me and he said, "Hey, we had a great time with you doing this event. Do you want to come work for us?" And we are based in New York City, and I'm from Columbia, Missouri. And I literally was, like, New York City. Wow, that'd be amazing. So I left college at the end of my junior year and I went to work for John and Scott Huey. And John is obviously a legend in this town as well as the head of CAA, one of the most influential booking agencies in the world. And so they brought me to New York, and I worked at that company for a year, and I loved it, loved everything about it. But I also knew it wasn't long term. So I moved to Nashville, and I went to work as the first A&R executive for a label called Reunion Records, which was owned by two men who turned out to be huge mentors of mine, Michael Blanton and Dan Harrell, and Michael W. Smith, whose concert I had promoted was on that label. So worked there as a talent scout for 6 years and really got to learn the process of discovery, production, making an album, selling it basically internally to your marketing team, and then supervising the launch of the record and the sell-through of the record, so that that chain of events from seeing something that really moves you to recording it, to marketing it, to distributing it was something I fell in love with and had a ton of fun with it. Worked there for 6 years. And at the end of that 6 years, Michael W. Smith and I decided to start our own label. So we launched a small independent label, and we ran that for 14 years. And it was the best part of my career until this podcast. And I really do think that there was just this, I think music is so powerful. I think, I heard someone once say, and I identified with it, songs are emotional bookmarks. You can say the name of a song of your era, of any time in your life, and you can automatically go to, who was I dating? What was the homecoming song? What was the song of the summer of my senior year? My marriage, all of these things. And I thought there's this through thread that music specifically, but entertainment can carry. And so when the first iPod came out in the 2004, 2005 range, I just knew in my gut that was the end of that chapter. It wasn't a format change like a cassette to CD. It was breaking an album apart and selling it piece by piece. Well, the music industry, the recorded music industry, was propped up on you buying an $18 CD, not a 99-cent download, or in the Napster era, nothing. So to make a long story short, we went on a 2-year journey to try to figure out where is it going next. And really where we came to was it's going live. The ticket is going to be where people want to gather. And we were very fortunate to meet with some incredibly high hitters at Live Nation and AEG, the two biggest concert promotion companies. And the owner of AEG, a man named Philip Anschutz, said that we were in Los Angeles. He owns the Staples Center, which I think now is crypto.com arena, but we're meeting there, and he pointed towards the arena. And he said, because I own the arena, I don't care what's in there any given night. I just want something to be in there because he owns the arena, he owns the parking, he owns the concessions. It's like all of these streams of revenue come under one roof. And he said it can be WWE, it can be a truck pull, it can be a Lakers game. I don't care what's in there. And it made me think about the communal spirit of the live event and how whatever you put your hard-earned money down for to pay a ticket to go to something, you're kind of voting for, this is a big part of me. This is what I believe in. And then you walk into a room where there's 20,000 other people that think like you do as well. So there's some commonality to gathering, right? And then I started seeing this opportunity to take that singular thread of entertainment and put it in other environments. And so I did things with convention and visitors bureaus, brought festivals and concerts to places that needed a rise in tourism. I produced a global talent competition for the Avon Cosmetic Company. They had a genius idea because the Avon Cosmetic Company is your grandmother's cosmetic company. Mm-hmm. And this is in the heyday of American Idol, and they did a global talent search for the voice of Avon. And I was one of the judges and executive producers of that outreach in 72 countries. So you start to go, okay, they're using music to really introduce people, the younger demographic, to their cosmetic. So all of this starts to resonate. And so in 2014, I really started to get involved in the corporate space and started seeing how those events were produced and having my own feelings of how they could be produced better. My very first tour manager had started a company, full production company based here in Nashville. And we met just casually after 15 years. And he wanted some maybe coaching, some executive coaching. And so he hired me as a consultant for his company, did that for 4 years and really saw a lot of good growth there. And then he brought me in full-time right at the beginning of the pandemic. So that's where I get to from 2014 or 15 until now. my heart has really beat for how do we connect in a more authentic and memorable way some of these experiences that we're having in the corporate event space. So how was that? Was that short enough?
That was perfect. You probably could talk about all the things that you've done and carried on. Your career is very lengthy. You've done a lot of amazing things, and those are great highlights. So that's awesome, Don. Thank you. Yeah. I love how you've kind of taken your experience and all the things that you've done from a production, music standpoint, and kind of putting it into events. And us coming together, you're right. When people come together under that one house, that one arena, I love that he was like, I don't care what happens in here. Just, I want something to be happening. I want people to be moving and coming and, communicating and coming together just as one. There's something really powerful about that too. Yes. Taking that same spirit and putting it into the corporate world, putting it into events as we know it, and the events that we're doing today. So I know we have a lot to talk about today. We have named this episode Space, Pace, and Flow of Events. And you have a lot to say with just the topic of space. It's something that has become a huge topic. Now that we've kind of fast forwarded through these past 3 years, it really has kind of spun everything up in the air where we're trying to figure out how to reinvent it. It's disrupted everything that's happened over the past 3 years. And this is something that's been a very good disruption in our industry of being in events. As we know, the agenda that stood, firm 3 years ago has now crumbled, and it can't go forward and move forward the same way that it has before. People want different things now when they actually do travel and leave their homes. And I know you have a lot to say on this topic. So I want to start by kind of you shedding some light on the episode, just space, pace, and flow of meetings, and tell us really what you guys are doing over there at the agency.
Great setup. And I will make a segue at the company that I referred to earlier. As with any live event production company, this pandemic kind of literally came out of nowhere and took potentially millions of dollars of business off of the books. So we had to scramble to, how do we do our best to save that? So we decided in March of 2020 to find the right developer and build our own platform. So one of the things that I had 3 titles at that company: business development, marketing, and sales. 2 of those I love. Business development I love, marketing I love, selling it's my least favorite because I'm very relational. I'm very high touch, long term, long runway. But what I learned through that experience was all of the different ways that you can look at presenting something virtually. And we chose to take the path of let's create this from a event producer's point of view rather than a straight technology point of view. So we ramped up, found this brilliant developer and ramped up. And I was a big part of thinking through, okay, if I have to be at home now and I'm locked down, what do I want to see and how do I learn? And I'll jump off of that by saying the only company that we understood when we got beat by was VFairs. Really just a fantastic site. And we understood it because we were real graphically oriented and you all were better. And it was like, okay, well, if we had to lose. So anyway, all of that to say, that gave me this great look at the marriage of tech and the marriage of, in real life. So when we came back and people started and stopped. Well, I think we're pretty much back now. It exposed a few things. One was there's a certain segment of the meeting and event industry that kind of wants to act like the pandemic never happened. Let's just go back to 2018, 2019 and, damn the torpedoes, let's go. But I think there is a pretty vocal segment of people that really started to enjoy the learning that they could do digitally. and participating in things from afar was okay. There were introverts that are like, I don't want to go back. I know that's a part of my job, but, and then there's obviously the economic blow to a lot of companies. So maybe they used to be able to spend, the money to spend 50 people to a meeting, and now they're sending 20 and 30 are attending virtually. So when it comes back full time, I started to hear from my contemporaries, I'm exhausted when I get back. I'm literally exhausted. Now, part of that is just retraining ourselves to travel and go and be on for 10 hours and have all this, but they're like, the agenda is just too dense. It's too packed. So all we're really doing is flying by and checking the things that we need to, be a part of, check it off, and then run to the next thing. And I have a friend who's a real strong leader in the industry. And she just said, my feet hurt. These convention centers are, it's a 15-minute walk to the next thing. It's like, they're just practical things. It made me think about the way I learn is to absorb content and, take on that content, talk to contemporaries or, coworkers about it, and then kind of go through a slower process, then now get to the next breakout. Because the next breakout is going to turn your brain into something completely different, even if they're complementary subjects. So I believe that we need to build in a hybrid solution even to the in-person meeting. And that means we need to slow the pace of the meeting. There does not have to be so much pressure to do so many things. You need to be able to give your company, yourself, everyone permission to be able to learn the way you learn best. I have kids that are in their mid-20s, and to think of them sitting in a windowless conference room with 500 people in theater-style seating, watching somebody for 45 minutes with PowerPoint slides, there's no way they'll learn that way. So when I launched Motion, it really was about a network of creative people that know how to teach content. Now, that is not to say they become the keynote speaker. They enhance the keynote speaker. So whatever level of creative engagement you put into your meeting gives you a better chance, gives the company a better chance for the attendee to retain that, to bring it home, to talk about it. Then the missing link is, do we have to rush on to the next thing? Because if you are in a keynote and you're incredibly inspired by it, and you're scribbling notes as fast as you can, throw it in your backpack, run to a keynote, something's there, and then you get back to your desk the next week, you open your notebook up, the spirit of that moment is gone.
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be space to be built into feeling what you just learned, talking to others. I mean, if you and I and 6 other people hear the same lecture that we loved, we're going to hear 6 different things. If I respect you and your point of view and how we can be better, I want to know what you heard, because it's not going to be the same thing I heard. So I believe that the agenda is going to get spread out, that the human connection is going to become more valuable. The authentic human connection is going to become more valuable. And I think there is a way to not solely focus on the 2 to 3 days that you're there in person. I think there's a way to stretch that in an authentic model that uses technology, but also gives us the ability to make the in-person event, which, I just kind of call the Super Bowl. It's like, okay, that's the Super Bowl, but what are we doing before and after to vet our time to make that 2 or 3 days the best it can be? I feel like I've talked a lot, so I want to let you ask a follow-up question or anything.
No, I mean, very nicely put. I think you're absolutely right that there needs to be that that space and that moment just to take it all in, come together, maybe share thoughts like you mentioned too. And I've heard a lot mentioned around connection over experience is kind of what you're hearing a lot of planners starting to plan their events around. And it really is true. Before, people wanted the huge experience with the, A-B level artists, with the blowout, after party at the end, and, an A-list, keynote that costs, $500,000 to fly in, on a jet, all these things. And now things are really shifting around. Those people in the audience, I think still attract some of those same contenders, but at a very small scale. Things need to just scale down a little bit. And I think everyone's feeling it as we're getting kind of back in person.
Yeah.
I know I've been to a couple of trade shows lately, and there was one trade show that I went to a couple of weeks ago, and there was 200, exhibitors there. And I was just kind of facilitating the organization of it, and just watching people, the flow and people chat and connect with each other was really powerful, even on that sort of scale. Was really nice to see out there too. But at the same time, you could tell people we're going, doing this in tight spaces, and there just need to be more room for people to walk around. And I mean, there's so many different ways you can kind of divide out space. We're talking about space in a couple different ways, specifically for events. But I know a common complaint that I've heard a lot of attendees say is the schedule is too tight. It needs to be a little looser. There are too many choices to make. There are too many sessions to go to. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's certainly a double-edged sword, because the people that are investing in trade shows pay a lot of money for their booth, and they are anticipating that you're going to come by, fall in love with their product, and buy it. So I get that you have to put as many of those booths in as you can sell if you're the event producer. I get that. There's a huge economic impact to what we are talking about. But I think there's different ways that we can look at that. And I sent you a slide. I'm wondering if you could put up. It's a very simple thought, but this is what I call, for right now, my working title on this is the 60-60 event. So the 60 days before and the 60 days after the event, to me, are when you can make the biggest impact. So what you and I are doing right now is we are getting to know each other over a robust platform where we can talk, we can interact, we can ask questions. And I look at this model and say, okay, well, what if that registration, which, by the way, this would drive registration sooner rather than later. What if the registration, you were able to click a box that said, here's what I'm interested in, and we set up weekly networking things on our way to the meeting. So it can be topic-based. It can be, literally just networking, like people you haven't seen for a while. And what this can do is begin to vet who you want to spend your time with, or what product you're looking for, or what are the types of, who are the types of personalities I'm looking to network with. And just as valuable, what are the things that don't even apply to me? So I don't need to go to that portion of the trade show, if you will, or that area of the trade show. So to me, that's 60 days. If you are thinking about offering this ability to digitally network on your way to, the event, then you're building trust, credibility, and you're getting to know people. When you and I finally meet, we've got a lot that we already know about each other. We don't have to spend 10 minutes with where you're from, how you doing, what's, all of these things. So I really think that we can use the space as the run up to the meeting. It makes the meeting more intentional and more valuable. And it gives you the ability to monitor your now I'm talking about like personal space. I want to spend this much time doing this and this much time doing that. And then, I am going to meet the people I want to meet, and I'm probably going to build, something authentic there. And that's where the real relationship happens. But then to me, on this slide where it says customize the authentic offering, it's that period after is where the fruit of the meeting really plays out. Because we go to meetings, we meet people, we make sales, we make trades, we introduce all of that. But if authenticity continues to be built and trust continues to be built, then the sell after the meeting is not as inauthentic, if you will. We have a relationship now. Now let's really get down to the brass tacks of how we can do business together. So I think about extending things before and after the meeting and letting the meeting then dictate how you're going to use your space and time.
Yeah, that's great. It makes sense. I think a lot of times, beforehand, we would just kind of forget about the event, go on to the next one. There's another trade show coming. There's another conference coming, and really kind of forget about the relationships or maybe the people that we've met along the way. But I love the idea of really setting a firm foundation and setting everyone up for success, whether it be the exhibitors, the attendees, whatever kind of use case this is.
Yeah.
And keep that, trust building up through the event. How exciting would that be? For instance, for us to network and for us to meet and go, hey, maybe we can do business down the road with each other. Can't wait to see you at XYZ conference, in 2 months, and then do the countdown, get up to the event, finally meet each other in person, connect again, continue the connection post-event, and really see those relationships start to build from there. I love this.
You just made a great point. I mean, maybe this is not the time for us to do business, but we have just built something where I go, oh, I remember when Candace and I talked about this. A good mentor of mine sometimes said, don't always look at no as a closed door. It might just not be the right opportunity. So what is the right opportunity? Well, now I know a lot more about you and your company and how you think and how we work together. And you go, now's the time. And it might be 10 times bigger than the little thing we were talking about at the meeting.
Yeah.
So, one other thing that I think we promote, and certain clients have taken a flyer and trusted us with it, and it's gone really well. And that is sending out some of the learning material ahead of the meeting. So we have kind of come up with a concept called a pre-note. And a pre-note would be something, now this works well for maybe an internal company meeting, 50 to 200 people. And we're coming together and we're gathering, we're having our company-wide meeting. And I will work with the CEO or the marketing team or whoever to go, okay, what are the 3 pain points that you want to solve? What's going on? And then what I will do is, with their blessing along the way, find the right experts to help solve their problems. Have those experts do a 10 to 12 minute, like a TED Talk, with 3 prompts at the end of that. Send that to the audience 7 to 10 days before the meeting, and let it be known you are not graded on this. This is not part of your job. This is what we're going to talk about when you arrive in Austin at the JW Marriott. This is what our company is going to talk about. And we want to know what your thoughts are. Now you've empowered your people. Yeah. So when we did this for the first time, the biggest question mark was, will anyone watch it? Because we're all so busy. I mean, you're going to get an email and you're going to say, watch this. Well, just even through any centralized distribution pipe, you can at least see how many people opened it and watched it. And we found that over 80% of the people watched it. Bring the keynote person back, do a quick summary, and then have them moderate the prompts. So, okay, this is what we talk about when we're talking about working remote versus being in the office and how those work together and things like that. You've learned these. Okay, question number 1 on the screen is this. Now, the other secret sauce is I talked this particular client into setting up the room in living room style seating. So we had 10 pods of 8 living rooms, couches, chairs, soft lighting, basically turned into each other so that you can talk. And psychologically, that's a big deal. You're not facing a stage, looking at an expert. You're sitting in a living room with your contemporaries. Now, the company has clearly planted people in sections that need to talk to each other. But I call that lowering the stage. So we're bringing the stage down to the level of the actual expert. who is the audience. So we can, like you said, you can pay $500,000 to get a lot of people to tell you great stories that have sold millions of books. And those are important things to do sometimes. But when you're thinking about problem solving or culture change, and you're literally telling your company, I want your thoughts, that's empowering. And again, for my kids' generation, they're not shy about talking. So they do 15-minute little discussions, and then somebody from each pod would get up and say, here's what we talked about. And that opened discussions with the others. So I think another thing the pandemic exposed to us is wanting to be included in ways we haven't been included before, of having a voice. Everybody wants to have a voice, or at least have the option to have a voice. And so the way that this pre-note thing works gives the audience power and agency to be able to say, this is what I think. And lo and behold, at the end of the meeting, when we got our post-meeting surveys back, it was the highest rated company meeting they'd ever done. The CEO actually, I told him I needed to put it on my LinkedIn. He said, I was afraid that our company was so far gone and burned out that I didn't know if we could get them back. And he said, they are rejuvenated and fired up like I've never seen them before. So it's just new thinking. So if you go back to, I'll tie this together now. If you go back to thinking about what I learned as an A&R person, you discover something, you kind of market it internally, you think about it, and then you introduce it to the public and you see the reception. That 1, 2, 3, 4 assembly line has kind of never left my brain. It's just the product or the offering has changed a little over the years. And I always make a very strong pitch that some sort of creative activation needs to be a part of everything people are doing. Because when you put a visual with some dry learning, or you put some entertainment with some dry learning, it sticks. It sticks better and longer, because they might go back to a magician who did something that wrapped up the morning session. But what they don't know is that I have written the script for that person that equals the content the CEO wants them to know. But they remember, and I'm hearing it over and over again, people remembered that moment, but that moment wouldn't have happened without the script that was written about reinforcing those pieces of content. So all of that to say, I'm greatly encouraged by the new thinking and the new learning that's going on in the space right now. There are 5 generations of people that are working together now, 5 from their early 70s to their early 20s. Then if you want to put bumper stickers over 5 different generations, everybody's learning style is different. We have to figure out a way to lower the stage, to give people, the microphone, to participate where appropriate, and empower them to help make change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, the cost of sending employees to meetings, going back to your example, both to meetings and conferences, or especially hosting your own, is incredibly high. But what are 2 or 3 things you can think of that should be the expectation as takeaways from that meeting?
Sorry, rephrase that. I think we probably talked about that, but I just 2 or 3. What are 2 or 3 takeaways from every meeting? Well,
yeah. So for instance, like the example that you mentioned, for those employees coming directly to that company meeting, they're coming burnout. It sounds like maybe, the CEO was trying to save the company. It was like his one last ditch effort. I'm sure everyone was tired from all these years. Maybe they're working remote or still going into the office or vice versa, but kind of bringing them all together in that one space. What are some expectations as takeaways from that meeting for them?
I certainly think we have to find ways to make the learning more engaging and more two-way. I just talked about, when people have the ability to speak into it, they're empowered, which means they remember it because, they now are, advocating for their point or their team's point. Another thing is just the human connection. The first one of these that I did under the motion flag happened to be a destination management company. Well, travel people they're not hard to get friendly. You have a welcome reception for them, and they're huggers. They're excited. My staff was like, these people are cool. Like, they're just so fired up to be together. Just giving them the ability to reconnect. We're still in the reconnection mode. And then I think, this is really a personal thought, but I think for companies to see that not only are they giving me a voice, but they're using our resources wisely. Like you said, the extravagance. I've gone to meetings before where it's just the way my brain works. I'm like, what else could they have done with that money instead of hiring Maroon 5? And unless you're going into a theater to see a band and you're in a seat, I have this theory that plenty of people use music incorrectly. It's a reception. It's the closing night event. We've just learned we're letting our hair down a little bit. And then the band starts. And, that's what a band does. They turn up their amps, and now all of a sudden we can't talk anymore. We kind of have to pay attention to this music. And if I don't like the music and I can't talk anymore, then I'm probably going to just check out. So to me, using music specifically as the culmination of a meeting of a closing night party is a poor use of money. There's plenty of ways to use it all around the meeting to drive points home. And yes, if you've got Taylor Swift and 60,000, seats at the football stadium, I'm sure your staff would love to go to that. But by and large, I've heard more people complain about the way music is used in the kind of networking sessions than have said this was awesome. So I think being a person who has been in entertainment my whole life, I do have expertise of how to make sure it's engaging and fun and entertaining, but doesn't step on the things that you want to do. And so I think, those are a couple things that I think people should take away from right now, because, we're not in a pandemic, but we are in a bit of an economic turndown. Layoffs are happening. People are fearful. We have to learn how to do. I'm stealing this line from my friend Greg Bogue. He has a great line. He says, "We need to do the things in person that we can only do in person. And there are plenty of other things we can do like this. They're not as authentic and all of that, but you can get work done this way." And that's why that run up to and that run down from the event really is, okay, well, there's plenty we can only do in those 2 or 3 days. What are those things? And let's make sure that not only are they engaging, but that your employees remember, your employees, your industry, your trade show, whatever, that they get the value and that something sticks to them longer than a week.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with that word authentic, I would love to hear maybe a tip or something to really help encourage planners and organizers out there listening to this. Maybe 1 or 2 things that they can do as they're planning. They're in the beginning planning stages of any type of event that's coming down the line this year or years to come for that matter. But what are some ways that they can be authentic in the planning process with the agenda, like you just talked about? Shake things up a little bit,
Yeah, I think this idea of I think the meeting starts when you register. I really think there's an opportunity that when you decide to pull the lever and say, I can't miss this meeting, and it's whenever it is far away, whether you choose to do things virtually, like we're doing right now, or just communications, things like that, here's what to expect. Surveys, how people are wired, just kind of getting to know your audience a little bit better is, I think, really important. It can't be a one size fits all anymore. Again, 5 generations of learners, and then there's a whole bunch of brand new people in the industry that don't have what it looked like in 2017, 2018, 2019. They come in and they go, well, what is a corporate meeting? What's it going to be like? And we have to set these expectations of what it's going to be like. Give them the ability to say, boy, here's a 2-hour gap of time when you can do this. Or if you want to go to your room and stare at a wall, just because you're emotionally taxed, fine with us. That's okay. So I think you can't customize large scale meetings for everyone, but you can set expectation. And then thinking about the ways that we can make the content stick. Everybody has a meeting because they have something and they have an association to bring together to talk about their new initiatives, things like that. The idea behind reinforcing content with entertainment came to me when a CEO said to me, that one of my first meetings I ever worked on, he said, I spent $1.5 million bringing 200 people to a town. And 2 weeks after the event, all they were talking about was the closing night party. And he said, that's bad governance on my part. So we worked together to think through, well, what are ways that we can make this stick? Because again, you are setting people in a windowless conference room, theater style seating, and having the CFO put his report up on the stage. All of us are going to fall asleep during that. That's really hard. So what are ways that we can maybe not make that might be impossible to make too entertaining, but there might be a way to drive a point home with a common theme, a common host, a personality that brings a spark to the whole thing. But it's not, I don't work with artists that look at corporate as a payday. Because corporate, you've worked in the music industry as well. There's absolutely a thought of, I'm going to charge more to do this because I know that they don't really want me to be there. I want there to be the type of artists that I work with are artists that can do TED Talks about why they do what they do, which means they have the heart of a teacher. And it also means that they're a creative soul that can reinforce dry content to make it stick longer. And I think that becomes a good use of company money, as opposed to, I remember when, Jason from accounting got hammered and danced karaoke or whatever, so that's not the good use of company money.
Right. Yeah. And those are really, really good examples and ways for, planners to really go forward and put these practices into play, and be authentic, with their agendas, with who they choose to host and MC these events. And if there's any kind of entertainment piece, make sure that there's a common thread among, the audience and the people that are attending, and make sure that it makes sense for the company, wise, if it's a company meeting, like we talked about. Gosh, we could talk so long about all these different topics and ways to really create space, but I'm excited to see how planners kind of move forward. And I'll be asking for the ones that are listening to this, who you are, I'll be asking what you'll be doing moving forward too. But maybe we do some sort of part 2 follow up to this, Dawn. This has been amazing.
Yeah, it's also been amazing the types of people that are reaching out. I'm working on 3 medical conferences this year. I think that's pretty exciting. One of them is about mental health. It's all about mental health marketing. And it's like, okay, artists are now talking about mental health through the pandemic. Like that's an exciting one for me to think about. It's like, oh, there's so much we can do. So I'm always up for part 2s. And even if it's just you and I meeting at the cool coffee shop that we want to meet at someday, we'll do that. But I can't thank you enough for giving me time on this. And again, I think your company has amazing product, and perhaps somewhere down the road, there's a way that all this can fit together for us to do some things like this together.
Yeah, I would love to see it. And you absolutely have my calendar for whatever day we want to grab coffee and talk more about all of these things too. But thank you so much for being on the show, Dawn. But before we end, where can listeners find you? Because I'm sure there are several different ways, and I'll let them know though.
So my company is called Motion Agency, and I was raised in Columbia, Missouri, and I now live in Columbia, Tennessee. So the initials of those two states are MOTN. So plenty of people say Moten, which is fine. Graphically, it looks like motion. So we're going to call it Motion. So it's motnagency.com. And my email is don@motionagency.com. And I'm very involved in LinkedIn, and I'm culling my audience there to really be about people that are thinking about the future. And there's some incredible people that are thinking great thoughts right now about how to make these events more engaging. But yeah, so reach out to me through LinkedIn or email or my website. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and check out some of the lives that Dawn has done on LinkedIn. I love the short videos that you're doing too, just to kind of give like, hey, here's what's going on this week. Here's what I'm seeing right now. Yeah. I watch those and I get a lot out of those. So please keep posting those.
Thank you. So you're the one who's engaging.
Yeah, I'm trying to get
engagement. Please engage.
I know, right? We're doing that right now. So there you go, Dawn.
That's right.
And many thanks to everyone tuning in, listening to this podcast. Many more podcasts are coming up. Share this out with your network as well. I know you found it super, super useful, and go out there and start being authentic. If you want to chat with us here at VFairs, we would love to hear from you. Send us an email. Our email address is sales@vfairs.com, and we'll be glad to help you out there. But until the next episode, peace, love, events. Take care. Bye, everyone. Bye.